dignified of you. It was a very professional performance from your own troops.
Yeah, that's all we could do. I thought we lost it maybe last Saturday at Kilmarnock, against Kilmarnock. But like I say, we tried our hardest right to the end and we took it right to the wire. But congratulations to Celtic.
How disappointing is it to have been going for that 10 in a row to let it slip away in the last day?
Well, I mean, at the end of 36 games, the best team comes out on top, and that's what's happened, you know?
It's the end of an era with many of you moving on,
yes.
and Walter's last day.
Yes.
A very, very emotional time.
Yeah, end of an era, like you say, but it's been a magnificent era, and we've left a great legacy for the next Rangers teams to try and follow.
I think from everyone at BBC Scotland, we wish you and your teammates all the very best in the future.
Thank you very much.
Richard Gough at Tannadice, while John Cahoon has been patiently waiting and watching the pictures coming in from Celtic Park and from Tannadice this afternoon. You said, John, let's forget about how the league was won in the end. Celtic are deserving champions.
Yeah, they are. But I would say a word to all the losers today, because for every winner in football has got to be a loser. It's why we like the game so much. But I feel for Jim Leishman and a lot of the other guys that lost out today. But I'd like to congratulate Celtic. I think they deserve to win the league championship, and they should enjoy their time as champions.
Yeah, it's always nice to win it with 3 or 4 games to go, of course. It doesn't always go that way, but I mean, let's just see some of the pictures from Celtic Park. And whoever you support, you have to be delighted for those Celtic fans. Or maybe if you're a Rangers fan, you don't. But I think any neutral would feel that they've waited 10 years for this victory, and they are going to celebrate in style. And I think it's fair to say that if you look back a couple of months, Celtic at that time were, I think, playing the best football of the season and are worthy champions.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that they're worthy champions. They fell over the line a little bit, but they do deserve to win it, and I don't think anybody would not want to see those supporters enjoying themselves tonight. But the only thing I would say is that perhaps the pitch won't be looking too clever next week for the Scottish Cup final.
Well, there is that, of course, yeah, because we'll be back there next week for the Rangers Hearts Cup final. And I suppose it's inevitable nowadays when players seem to go far more regular than they ever did before, managers as well. There will inevitably be conjecture over Wim Jansen's future, and indeed some of the players in that Celtic team, despite the incentive of the Champions League next season.
Yeah, I think there will. That's just the nature of the game now, that the players have got a lot more power and managers have got a lot more power. But I do think every single person at Celtic has played their part, right from Fergus right down to the backroom staff at Celtic, and I think they should just be allowed to enjoy at least the next week before everybody starts asking the questions that inevitably need to be asked.
Yeah. How big a factor were Wim Jansen's signings? I'm thinking of people like Craig Burley, like Paul Lambert. I mean, they played a huge part, surely.
They played a huge part. Henrik Larsson was a fantastic player all season. Other players that have been there a little while, Jackie McNamara had a great season, but Paul Lambert came and did a job for Celtic that somebody hasn't done for a long time. He got the ball, kept the ball, and gave them a little bit of solidity, and I really do think that. And then his last game, Harold Bratback, ended up coming good just when it mattered.
You said that upstairs, you know, when he came on as sub, I said, I bet you he scores a goal here, and he did, of course. And Jonathan Gould as well, let's not forget, who came from, what was it, Bradford City's 3rd team, as one of the most unsung goalkeepers ever to arrive in Scotland, I think, and he's been a hero.
Yeah, he has been. I don't think there's hardly any game that you can point the finger and say that Celtic lost because of him, and I suppose the rest of the Scottish Premier League managers will be trolling the English reserve leagues looking for the next Jonathan Gould now.
Looking to turn up a Joe, but those are live pictures from Celtic Park, the celebrating Celtic fans after the 2-0 win over St Johnstone, which finally gave them the Premier Championship. Let's just confirm the league table, the picture that all those Celtic fans wanted to see. Celtic finishing on 74 points, 2 clear of Rangers at the end of the day. And Heart of Midlothian, who may well be thinking, well, if things had been different over those last 3 or 4 games, we might still have been in at the death. They finish in a credible 3rd place with that cup final to look forward to next season. Talking about the cup final, of course, that's next week. Tonight we're back, and I should stress it's on BBC 2, not BBC 1, BBC 2 Scotland tonight, 10:25. Highlights of the sports scene match of the day, Celtic against St Johnstone, with all the celebrations, the interviews and the aftermath of Celtic's great day in the sun. And next Saturday, it's the Tennant Scottish Cup final. We're on air from 12:55, BBC 1 Scotland, live coverage of Hearts against Rangers, the 1998 Scottish Cup final. So let's leave you with one last look at the pictures from Celtic Park, those Celtic fans beginning the celebration party they've waited for 10 years for. Bye for now.
Prevented arch rivals Rangers from lifting the trophy for a 10th successive season. But behind the celebrations, Wim Jansen was at odds with Celtic's most influential office bearers over the future direction of the club. Having staved off financial disaster 4 years ago, the board made it clear they regarded the club as more important than a single manager, even though he had served only a year of a 3-year contract.
Maybe the long-term strategy we want to pursue may be difficult to pursue with a coach like Wim, who appears to prefer the short-term situation.
The recriminations over Wim Jansen's departure are bound to continue for a while yet, but in a city where footballing success is more than a matter of mere pride, they will be swiftly forgotten if his successor can maintain Celtic's position at the top of Scottish football. Andrew Castle, BBC News, Celtic Park.
Hamilton Blown.
Big trophy, its first polish. They admitted Jansen would have been pushed if he hadn't jumped.
I wouldn't want to say specifically, but I would say that the general feeling was amongst the board as a whole and amongst Jock and myself was that unless he was prepared to change the way he was operating and would start to fit in with the club and give us plans for the future and start looking at players that you weren't expected to sign and so forth and change matters and as I say, work with the organisation rather than as if you like, a maverick, as it were, he seemed to be, then perhaps it would have been better that we would not continue this way.
Wim Jansen arrived at Celtic Park last July. Despite appearances in the European Cup final with Feyenoord and the World Cup final with Holland, the Dutchman was a relative unknown. His coaching career had taken in Feyenoord, Lokeren, Dordrecht, Saudi Arabia and Hiroshima. But within 4 months at Celtic, he guided the club to a Coca-Cola Cup win and set them up as potential champions. Despite saying Jansen's decision was in Celtic's best interests, Fergus McCann paid tribute to the Dutchman's achievements.
I certainly he gets a lot of credit for what we did over the year, but I would like to think that we have a lot of people deserving credit. We have, I think, the strongest squad of players in Scotland to start with, and I think we've done extremely well, and I think I compliment not just the 9 new players that came in with Wim Jansen, but also the others who've been here. Some have been here for 3 or 4 years, and I think they all played a part in our success.
Well, that was Fergus McCann speaking to me literally 10 minutes ago. Things are happening very quickly here at Celtic Park. Wim Jansen himself has been speaking today in Portugal, where, as I said earlier, the team are preparing for tomorrow night's match. We hope to bring you some of Wim Jansen's comments before the end of the programme. In the meantime, back to the studio.
Thanks, Jim, there at Parkhead. You're watching Scotland today with
to do things in a measured plan and organised way, following a strategy and a plan and a policy. And I think it would not be unfair for me to say I had some difficulty in being in the same wavelength in that regard as Wim.
On the part of Wim, there was a continued refusal to accept responsibility. It was always someone else's fault. It was either players into the quarry or Jock Brown was a problem or whatever. He seemed to be very much in the mode of short-term thinking constantly, although we tried to get plans out of him to think forward. A second example, a more specific example, would be we have a policy here in the event of any important player or high-value player being acquired, that the head coach or manager must see that player. He refused to follow that policy. And that is a fundamental point of difference. For example, in the targeting of Harold Brackback, we provided a private plane for him, which he refused to use to go and see the player. He refused a request in the month of March, earlier in March, for an assessment of the players that we have and provide a plan for squad improvement.
Despite the warning signs, the Celtic supporters can barely believe it. Their celebrations at winning the title and ending Rangers' decade of domination were still ongoing as Wim Jansen's departure was confirmed.
Success-starred fans were still celebrating this afternoon as news began to filter through that Wim Jansen had resigned. It wasn't a surprise that the man who delivered the league trophy they'd craved had gone less than 48 hours later, but they were still furious. They believe he's been forced out.
Absolutely shattered. I'm a great believer Wim Jansen should still be there, and Fergus McCann and Jock Brown, who the two know absolutely nothing about Celtic Football Club, should actually leave.
It's an absolute disgrace. What he's done for us, no other manager's ever done. What is the hidden agenda? There was always a hidden agenda. Behind Fergus McCann and Jock Brown, there's always been a hidden agenda. Nobody's going to get bigger than them two. They think they are Celtic. This is Celtic. Wim Jansen knows what Celtic's about now. It's an absolute disgrace.
It's time we get the truth. What's really happening up the road? Wim Jansen should never have been allowed to go. Never.
Saturday's success has ensured Wim Jansen will remain a hero with the fans at least, but the board said that his decision to go was the best for the club. A columnist on the Celtic View agrees.
Personally, I'm not disappointed because I think that Celtic could have had this league tied up a few weeks ago, and you know, failure to beat Hibs and failure to beat Hearts earlier on, failure to beat Dunfermline meant that we were going right to the wire for the last day of the season. For the pool of players there, I think that Celtic could have closed the deal on the league a bit earlier.
Tonight, angry fans were giving vent to their feelings outside Parkhead, their views echoing the sentiments that ushered out the old Celtic board and brought in Fergus McCann.
Fergus and Jock Brown, they don't really care about us. They don't give a damn about us. And at the end of the day, we're Celtic, not them. I mean,
Never a dull moment seems a reasonable way to describe Wim Jansen's 10-month stay at Celtic Park. He's brought the success that the supporters were yearning for and laid the foundations as well for success in Europe. But when Jansen joined up last July, he wasn't given much of a warm welcome. When Celtic ended months of uncertainty by naming their new head coach, the response from many was Wim who. His last job had been in Japan. One tabloid newspaper, in bad taste, described him as the second worst thing to hit Hiroshima. As a player, Jansen lined up in 2 World Cup finals for Holland, but his coaching career in Scotland got off to the worst possible start. Celtic lost their first 2 league games and huge doubts were cast over his appointment. But gradually Jansen turned things around, bringing in his type of player to his type of tactical setup. He stuck with his own system and Celtic were rewarded in November with victory in the Coca-Cola Cup. An early season breakthrough, but the big test was still to come. In the New Year Old Firm game, another breakthrough. A precious victory over champions and biggest rivals Rangers. A huge psychological blow heading into the second half of the league campaign. But it became clear that in the background all was not well. There were reports of interference in Wim Jansen's role as coach and a developing rift with general manager Jock Brown. Jansen revealed there was a 1-year get-out clause in his 3-year contract, but he didn't want to say too much more.
There's been a lot of talk about a problem between yourself and Jock Brown. Is there a problem?
If you don't mind, I don't want to comment on any other stuff.
In pursuit of their first league title in 10 years, Celtic's form stuttered. But on Saturday, the long wait for championship glory ended. Wim Jansen became the first foreign coach to lead his team to Scottish League success. Celtic have the chance now to qualify for the lucrative Champions League in Europe next season. But if Celtic are to write another chapter in the story of their revival, they'll have to do it without the man who took them back to the top in the domestic game, Wim Jansen. That's the big story. The rest of the sport is coming later. We'll also hear live from Celtic's general manager Jock Brown on the day that Wim Jansen quit as the club's head coach.
Still to come on tonight's programme.
By the Celtic general manager Jock Brown. And Jock, you won't be at all surprised to know that there are supporters outside who still can't quite believe that this has happened 2 days after the title was won.
I'm not surprised to hear that, Rob. I understand that.
Are we talking here short-term approach, which was Wim Jansen, against long-term strategy, which was what Celtic wanted to do?
It's hard to encapsulate, I think, but that's not a bad summation, I think, of the general position. That's our view of that. I don't know what Wim is saying in Portugal, but there certainly was conflict in terms of an approach from us, from the board, from me, which was long-term, strategic, trying to plan, trying to do things in an orchestrated fashion, and that was a policy which Wim made it perfectly clear he was not happy with.
Was there a personality clash between you and Wim Jansen, which has been alluded to for some time now?
Well, I'm aware that's been alluded to for some time. If there was, I don't think it is relevant. What matters is that any clash, in my opinion, was a clash in an approach to policies and strategy. And it's quite clearly set down from the board how we want to operate. It's a long-term strategic plan. I am charged with the task of putting that into place. That means relating to Wim in the correct manner. And it was quite clear that the policies the club had did not coincide with Wim's own policies. So from that point of view, there was a clash.
Fergus McCann was detailing earlier on instances where the club were not at all happy at the way Wim Jansen was doing the job.
Yes, he has identified 1 or 2 examples of differences in terms of approach and policy. And there's no question that has been the case for some time, which makes his decision today and announcement today not too unexpected.
He's decided to resign. Had he not resigned, would Celtic have taken steps to get rid of Wim Jansen?
Well, the break was two-way. I think it's clear to say that. And there's no doubt there was concern on the part of the board that the policies set down were not being willingly followed by Wim. So I think in order for him to continue, there would have had to be some change of heart in his mind about how he wanted to approach things. And with all honesty, I think it's very unlikely that Wim was going to change in that regard. So it's hypothetical, but it would be totally wrong for me to suggest there was no possibility that the board might have taken some action themselves.
So do you and Celtic think that the best way forward for the club now is without Wim Jansen?
Well, it's not a question of that. We've no option on the matter because Wim has taken his position. It was not unexpected.
But are you happy then about the future without Wim Jansen? Let me put it that way.
Well, I'm totally optimistic about it. I'm not happy that a coach is here for such a short time. He wanted a one-year contract. We were very keen to make it longer because we want long-term convincing policies. We didn't have that opportunity with Wim, and that, for me, is very sad.
Thanks very much for joining us, Jock Brown, on the day that Wim Jansen resigned as the head coach of Celtic. A beer back to you.
Thanks, Rob.